Okay, good morning all. Very welcome to this very interesting Voice of Healthcare hosted event. And we thank Voice of Healthcare for giving us the opportunity to host us this very nice event, which started today morning with Dr. Balram Bhargav during the inauguration. And I have with me Shri Navdeep Rinwa, who is the Joint Secretary of the Department of Pharmaceuticals and Medical Device Policy Making. We also have with us Mr. Jatin Mahajan, who's the young, energetic, dynamic managing director of the leading IVD manufacturing company of India, Mitra Industries. And we have Mr. Gaurav Agarwal, who is the MD of IIT APL, which is, I would say, currently been winning all the awards going forth from various departments as the most dynamic medical device company in the field of medical electronics and implants. And also we have Mr. Rahul Agarwal. Mr. Rahul Agarwal is the representing as a director of Quadrio Capital, which is a PE investment fund and operating in the sphere of healthcare and medical devices. Medical devices, as we know, constitute 7 verticals. We've got disposables, we've got consumables, we've got instruments and implants, and we've got IVD reagents and kits. India imports around $5.5 billion worth of medical devices and exports $2.1 billion worth of medical devices. 85% of what India consumes is imported, and there's a good opportunity to make those products in the country. And we've seen the government taking lots of initiatives over the last few years in making India more and more the products being made in India. So recently, post the big cloud of COVID, we've been able to see one silver lining, and that silver lining has been the focus on medical devices. We've never seen so much interest of new entrepreneurs and business people from various walks of businesses, whether auto part makers or automakers or garment industry manufacturers or textile company, or even people from hospitality, food business, who found their own businesses having a bleak future for the next 1.5 years or so and decided to diversify into medical devices. Along with this, the acute shortage and the underbelly of the dependency on imports was exposed, and the Prime Minister gave a call that India needs to be Atmanirbhar on medical devices. So, starting from you, Gaurav, how would you define the Atmanirbhar campaign? What does it mean for our kind of industry? I would request the answers if it can be concise, so we can have more number of questions then. Thank you.
So at the outset, I would like to thank Voice of Healthcare and Rajiv ji for having me on this very elite panel. So I am an optimist in response to your question, Rajiv ji, and as you said, every cloud has a silver lining. And I think the emphasis on medical devices is the silver lining in the COVID cloud. Starting the COVID battle with huge import dependencies, today we have export surplus across all COVID product solutions such as PPE kits, sanitizers, N95 masks, ventilators, HFNOs, etc. So that goes on to prove that India is extremely resilient, and we have risen extremely well as innovators to this COVID challenge. So that is one part of it. And I'm also a firm believer in the fact that Atmanirbhar Bharat campaign cannot be complete or a success without Atma Samman. I think we need to take a lot of pride in what we manufacture, and those products need to be of global quality and standards. And also, I believe that the speed of response, specifically for COVID, shouldn't be compromised by a compromise in testing, validation, and quality. In a few cases, we have noticed that, and that is only going to derail the Atmanirbhar Bharat campaign. We should not only aim at import substitution, but I think we should aim at creating export creation opportunity. And this can only happen by keeping a razor sharp focus on quality. So that's all that I have.
Okay. Thanks, Gaurav. Jatinji, uh, in terms of the IVT industry, how would you find Atmanirbhar campaign in terms of meaning or in terms of a translation? Uh,
Rajit, thank you very much. And before I begin, I would like to thank Voice of Healthcare also for giving me this opportunity to share my views on this interesting panel. So basically, the current pandemic has brought everything, like, what has happened is it's taken everybody by surprise and has brought spotlight on the diagnostic industry. So the mantra here is what WHO also talks about is that, testing, testing, testing. Suddenly there is a shift in the demand for COVID-19 test kits and accessories related to the COVID-19 test kits. So, before I go into details, I'll also like to talk about the IVD market. So, it's the fourth. India is the fourth largest market in Asia after China, Japan, South Korea. We are a $5 billion, market size of this industry, and 70% of the clinician decisions are based on these diagnostic test kits. And most of the companies in IVD space are in the MSME space. So approximately 80% are in MSME space. So when this COVID-19 happened, there was a lot of expectation on the diagnostic companies in terms of precision of the test, in terms of accuracy of the test, in terms of making it economical, affordable, accessible. So as a company and as part of many of the companies, we've been able to rise to the occasion and provide test kits, be it the PCR, be it the antigen test, or be it the antibody test. However, during this process, it also exposed certain weaknesses in the system. So my going forward solution and making India and making this industry self-reliant are seven options which will help us in this direction. The first thing is availability of raw materials, fine chemicals and biologicals at an economical price. Secondly is a better interaction between academia and the industry. Third thing is, since most of the companies are in the MSME space, easy availability of capital and at a lower rate of interest and longer repayment cycle, so that the industries and the companies can stabilize its operations. As far as then promotion, the very important point is the promotion and incentivization of the product certification, because most of the MSME companies are focusing on the domestic market. So with these product certifications like ICMed through QCI, they can assure the customer and the patient that their product conforms to certain quality standards. Then from the government side, what is required is the inclusion of domestic industry in Ayushman in Ayushman Bharat schemes, because then what will happen is that they can get the critical mass to grow, to sustain their operations, and then to innovate the products as per the schemes of the Ayushman Bharat. And lastly, companies who want to export, there should be export linked incentives so that their operations can stabilize. So with this, I'd like to conclude. Thank you, Rajiv.
Thank you. So we've had a very interesting and long list of wish list from the dynamic Jatinji, which I'm sure Mr. Nirbhar must be making notes of. So, Nirbhar sir, we've never seen the government work so hard and so fast as we did during this COVID times. This crisis, in a way, was a blessing in disguise because the government and the industry worked in tandem as a team. It was 24/7 access to you and vice versa, and to Secretary Sir and even the complete, I would say, department. NPPA was working as a facilitator and not as a regulator in this whole time period. We would like to know what, in terms of this making India Atmanirbhar, how is the DOP taking the meaning of Atmanirbhar in the short term and in the long term both? So, what are your plans for the industry for this, both short term and long term, as a policymaker?
Thank you, Rajiv ji, for giving me an opportunity. We in DOP have taken the the pandemic as an opportunity rather than a threat. And as far as departments working is concerned, the experience of working very closely with industry during lockdown really helped the department in understanding many of the issues that the industry was facing for many years, uh, and we had more clarity. And the kind of results that the industry showed, especially in the products for which in the beginning of the lockdown we were totally dependent on imports, the COVID related products, and how in within a short period of some months, we not only started producing in sufficient quantity for our own needs, we are now exporting to the world. This has also given us a lot of confidence about the capability of our domestic industry. And during this time only, just before the lockdown started on 20th March 2020, this year, we got two very ambitious schemes approved from Union Cabinet regarding medical devices. One is the Medical Device Park scheme, where we are proposing or we are planning to establish 4 medical device parks in the country, where Government of India would be financing about 100 up to 100 crores rupees, and rest would be financed by the state governments. And we have also come out with a production linked incentive scheme, where about 28 manufacturers of medical devices would be selected under the scheme, and for 5 years they will be provided financial incentives at 5% of their sales of selected products which we have mentioned in our scheme in greenfield facilities which these manufacturers are going to put up under the scheme. Now these are the schemes which we have come out for the first time. We never had a production linked incentive scheme. So we also had a scheme on bulk drugs as well as bulk drug parks. Even in parks, we earlier had a scheme where we were giving 25 crores. Now we have, we have scaled that up by 4 times. And I'm very happy to share that the state governments are showing a lot of interest. And if we are able to set up these parks, the parks would have common infrastructure facilities, a complete ecosystem. The state governments would be providing electricity, water, everything 24/7 at reasonable cost. The land would be given at a reasonable cost. And if we add the production linked incentive scheme to that, it provides a good opportunity for a company to set up a plant this time. And also, the corporate income tax has been reduced to 15% for new companies which start production before 31st March 2023. So all this bode very well for the medical device industry. And also, I forgot to mention one important thing: the public procurement order that the government has come out, where it says that up to tenders worth less than 200 crores, there would be no global tenders, only local suppliers of category 1 and 2 would be able to apply. Local supplier 1 is the one which has the product has domestic value addition more than 50%, and the category 2 has domestic value addition more than 20%, 20% to 50%. So all these, if we take it together, combined with the ease of doing business which is happening, as you must have seen in the papers, that the labor code, all the labor laws have now been subsumed in 4 codes, and the idea is to make it easy for the companies as far as labor related compliances are concerned. And couple, if we add to it many other things, the state governments are coming with new incentive schemes. So it is a wonderful time to invest. And the thinking is that it's not only make in India for India, it is make in India for the world. That is the vision that the government of India and the department is looking at.
Thank you, Nirbhar sir, for this lovely exhaustive explanation about the proactive working by the government even in these difficult times. Gaurav, coming back to you, uh, we've seen that for the 39 COVID medical devices, including the IVD, there's been a steep increase in demand. But for the other medical devices, the demand has been impacted. Number one, what is your take on that? Number two, other than what Mr. Nirbhar has mentioned in terms of the infrastructural steps being taken by the government, for which we've seen a fantastic response from state governments. More than 8 state governments are in touch with IMED and seeking inputs as to how to create a medical device park in their state. So while we are running medical device parks and huge interest on addressing our core issues of infrastructure, we have to now go forward. So what else you would like to be added on the infrastructure? We have got the skeletons. Where is the flesh required to build this lovely model that we have to create?
So thanks, Rajivji. It's a long question broken into two parts. I would address the first part, but before I do that, I would like to congratulate Navdeepji and DOP for bringing out these 4 enabling policies that he just mentioned. First is that of medtech parks. Second is that of creating a PPO which supports Indian manufacturers. The third is subsuming labor laws into 4 courts. And the fourth is of PLI. All these 4 are wonderful and enabling schemes. And coming to your first question, Rajivji, barring IVDs, in the first week of April, we were chosen by Andhra Pradesh MedTech Zone to build ventilators for the country, given our capabilities in medical electronics. And very quickly, we saw, like with every other product subset like PPEs, the demand very quickly outstripped the supply. So, and the entire demand supply curve within 2.5 months turned on its head. It became inverted. There was excessive supply and lack of demand. So I'll give you an example of pre-COVID times. There was a consumption of about 10,000 ventilators in the country. 9,000 of those were imported, and only 1,000 ventilators were sold by the remaining 3 serious manufacturers. Now, in COVID, an estimated 80,000 plus ventilators have been deployed in private and government sector, and over 52,000 of those have been through Indian manufacturers. It's a matter of great pride, but I think India has seen a glut of some of these equipments, and for some time there will be a cool down period and a slowdown in demand. So I hope that answers the first part of your question.
And second part, go ahead.
The second part, what we would like to see from a policy enabling policy framework standpoint, I believe it takes 2 to tango. And Atmanirbhar Bharat campaign, without an enabling and supporting policy framework for Indian innovators, to use a little bit of a humor, would be like soda without fizz. So I would just like to suggest a few measures. They're very brief. And I would also like to point out to a data that you've already mentioned, that we had 40,000 worth of imports in the medtech industry in 2018-19, about 25,000 crores of which was only in medical electronics. 65% of country's entire medtech import was only in the field of medical electronics. So Navdeepji, the policy framework that I would like to suggest is very simple. It's ABC. A is to acknowledge and identify. I think we need to identify and acknowledge areas of high import dependence, such as sensors, battery chargers, battery packs, X-ray equipments, MRI machines, even PCB manufacturing. There are just a handful of PCB manufacturers in the country, and that is a huge limitation to promote medical electronics in India. The second is to bridge the gap. Jatinji spoke about that. Bridge the gap between academia, industry, and funding agencies. Right now, we have great bio incubators, we have great innovators, we have good funding agencies, and great institutions of excellence, but there is no platform to bring all these 3 together. If the government can create a national body to create an ecosystem which brings funding agencies, innovators, as well as industry on a common platform, I think that will be an enabler for Make in India, especially for medical electronics, which is very complicated. Third would be to champion the cause. ABC, the C is champion the cause. The government would need to provide funding in form of grants. Today, we have seen that Department of Science and Technology, through its various bodies and schemes, provides excellent schemes to fund plant and machinery. But is plant and machinery enough to get innovation kick-started in the country? I think it's not. I will give you an example. A young innovator has to hire expensive resources, rent a facility, build a prototype, get into tech transfer agreements. All of this makes part of working capital, which is not supported by any government agency. So I would like to say that all these schemes where we only provide for plant and machinery is like providing a car without fuel. Working capital is the fuel that is required to power innovation in the medtech segment, especially in medical electronics.
Thank you. Thank you, Gaurav, for this interesting perspective. Coming to you, Rahul, don't worry, I've not forgotten you. So, being from a non-manufacturing, keen investing background of the sector, what is your take on the sector? Why have investors been shying away all these years from medical device sector, and why are they excited now?
Sure. Rajiv ji, thanks for inviting me on this panel, and Voice of Healthcare as well. See, you're right that the number of deals which investors, private equity investors, have done in the medical devices or medical consumable space have been limited. There have been deals, but they have been limited, and I'll explain the reasons for this. Right. But first of all, I'd like to say that definitely now we and many other investors are very interested in investing in this space. And that also comes from, if you look at a relevant example, the pharmaceutical industry, right? Look at the growth which Indian generic pharma manufacturers have created in the last 15 years. And India has become the largest exporter of generic pharmaceuticals to every country in the world, literally, and more importantly, to the most regulated and most quality conscious markets like US, Europe, Japan, etc. Right? So our view is that wave of growth should and can now come in the medical device and medical consumable space, because for whatever reason, this is one space which has trailed so far. I agree with what Mr. Renwa was saying and what Gaurav was saying, that India should become a medical device and medical consumable provider, not only to Indian buyers, but also to global buyers, like our pharma industry has done, right? And we have every reason and every potential that we can do that. Now, for that to happen, we see 2 or 3 impediments which will have to be removed, right? See, we have invested in hospitals, we have invested in pharma companies, we have been looking to invest in medical device and consumable companies. So the reason why growth has been limited, and that is why the private equity investment has been limited, is that the adoption of locally manufactured medical devices and medical consumables have been limited, right? And Jatin and Gaurav will vouch for it, because I'm sure they would be trying to go and sell their products to Indian consumers every day. And the reason for that is, for some reason, the buyers, which is the doctors, the technicians who decide what to buy and what to consume within hospitals, within diagnostic labs, so far they have been more tilted and more favored towards foreign manufacturers, right? And this is particularly true about buyers in metro markets, in tier 1 markets, corporate hospital chains, corporate pathology or radiology chains, right? Uh, the Indian pharma industry has been able to penetrate. So now the adoption of Indian manufactured generic drugs compared to global manufactured drugs has tilted more in favor of Indian manufacturers. That still has to happen in Indian medical device and medical consumables, right? So 2 or 3 things will have to be done. One, how do we create and assure quality benchmarks, which can then uh, convince and to an extent force the buyers to pick up that adoption the way they have done for generic pharma, right? So one is should we create a quality benchmark system like the CE or like those benchmarks which can convince buyers to consume, right? Second is uh, agencies like NHA, the National Health Agency, they have been trying to do it over the last 2-3 years, and we've seen that where they're trying to promote locally manufactured products, take it to consumers, try and convince them to buy more and more, right? And some positive changes have already happened. For example, the Ayushman Bharat, where if that can be somehow linked to purchase of locally manufactured products. So one, of course, the pricing of Ayushman Bharat is itself forcing hospitals, diagnostic labs to adopt more indigenous products because they need to manage costs low. But if there can be some framework put in to link indigenous buying to those reimbursements and all, I think that can go a long way into more higher adoption of locally manufactured products. But as an investment firm, our belief is that the Indian medical device and consumable industry can, over the next 10 to 15 years, replicate what the Indian pharma industry has achieved in the last 10-15 years.
Great. Very happy to note the optimistic note from your end. If the financiers know that the industry they are betting upon and wanting to place their bets on medical device industry, it's good to know the potential going forward. Jatinji,
Right.
what is difference now? What we've got this optimistic note now, and we did not have this earlier on. But there are still these issues about cost competitiveness. So, can you just broadly explain to me why IVD industry could not be competitive earlier, and even right now are facing these challenges? That's why you are more than 75% import dependent.
Okay, Rajiv, thank you very much. And some of the points have already been shared by my panelist here, members here. And basically what happens is, if I give you the IVD perspective, the main critical components are imported. So we don't. So as I mentioned in my earlier, question, also that the ecosystem needs to be there. The ecosystem is of the critical components like the antigen and the antibody, the fine chemicals, the biologicals. If that is there, so if that is being locally produced, so it will be very economical. Right now, what is happening is most of the IVD companies, because the raw material is not available in India, they are sourcing it from either US, Europe, either from Korea or from China or from any other country where they can get it. Now, sometimes what happens is that they are very expensive, and definitely when the raw material is expensive, it will get added on to the cost of the product. Second disadvantage that I see is that the Indian company space is the inverted duty structure. Now, it is if I look at the inverted duty structure. If I import a fully completed kit, that is at a zero duty structure. Whereas if I have to import a raw material, that will be at a there'll be duties involved, more than 12%. So that puts a local manufacturer at a disadvantage.
Sure,
The other,
I got that.
yeah.
Just before you go further, Jatin.
Yeah.
So one is custom duty, and second you said is the inputs, the raw materials. So
Yes.
these antigens and these sero panels,
fine biologicals, chemicals,
and biologicals and all that. Why can't we make them in India? What is holding us from making these in India with such a big scientific community in the country?
So I believe that maybe the focus is not there. So when we have, so basically I think the thing is there has to be more interaction between the industry and the academia, because academia doesn't know what the market requirements are. They are making it fine, but they need to be aligned to what the market needs and requirements are. So I'll give an example of where I've seen it in the international market. In other countries, the alignment is so great that the industry says, give me this particular product for a particular disease, and within 30 days they're able to launch it with all approvals and everything. They're good to go. Whereas in India, it's a big struggle first to find the lab where antigens and antibodies, because again the core story is about the antigen and antibody. This is a key component for the IVD test kit. Now, if that is available and at an economical price, I think that will be a game changer for the industry. And what everybody echoed here, we will put India on the world map. That's the important thing. So if that is available, some grant is available to the academia and all the infrastructure, like for example, the equipments required for processing of antigens or antibodies, the testing labs. We need panels for QC purposes to improve the quality of the product. If that ecosystem is available, I think we are not less than anybody else in the world. We can definitely put India on the world map. If we as a company can have 55 patents, we have 55 patents. I'm sure that there are other companies, if given that opportunity, they can do much better. And that's what the intent should be also. Because, yeah.
Nirbhar sir, how can Department of Pharmaceuticals assist the manufacturers, like you've been doing that in COVID times? Take this process forward, because we find that these raw materials can be made in the country. We have the scientific community, we have the academic talent available, we have the manufacturers who are willing to collaborate and wanting to buy. But a bridge role has to be provided between the various silos. How can the Department of Pharmaceutical help to play this bridge role?
Rajiv ji, can you just briefly repeat the question?
Yes. So, Nirbhar sir, Mr. Jatin Mahajan just explained to us that the manufacturers need access to raw materials like antibodies, antigens, testing panels, and biologicals from the scientific institutes in the country, the academic talent which is available over here. And how can Department of Pharmaceuticals help to the academia and the industry reach out to each other to get these products which they are importing and get them developed in the country? They are being forced to import, but they can be made here.
Thank you, Rajiv ji. This is a good suggestion. Recently, Department of Pharmaceutical made a committee involving representatives of all the departments which do research in pharmaceuticals, be it DSIR, DBT, DHR, all the departments, as well as leaders from the pharma industry. Had Kiran Mazumdar, Shawji, Mr. Pankaj Patel, Mr. Satish Reddy, and others. And they had a series of meetings. The committee had a series of meetings and has come out with a report on how we can have a better industry academia linkage, how we can give boost to the R&D on pharmaceuticals in the country, what kind of policy incentives the government of India can come out with. And I'm sure that's a very good report prepared after a series of consultation with a number of stakeholders, both from private industry as well as all the government departments involved in the research and development on pharmaceuticals. And the idea is to create an ecosystem and make policies which would help in making industry academia linkage more systemic, and rather than individual institutions having on their own initiative some kind of linkage. And the issue that has been raised by Mr. Mahajan can be looked at. The department can take it up with the concerned departments and try to ensure that if some kind of raw materials can be made in India and can be made available to industry for IVDs, we would definitely like to play a role in that. And I would like IMED and other industry associations to help us in coming out with some solution on that front and give their inputs also and get involved in this exercise. And as far as the issue of inverted duty structure is concerned, we would also like to give some more focus on this issue and see to it that this situation is changed, and there are no concerns on that front. Maybe to come out with a phased manufacturing program, which MeitY had come out with. We are studying that program also.
Thank you, sir. Gaurav, you wanted to add to that?
Yes, sir. So, Navdeep ji, the point that Jatin ji made is very valid and is applicable in the cardiovascular industry also. In medtech space, in medical device space, one of the success stories that India has is stents. Today 60% consumption of stents is with domestic industry, which was barely 20% 5 years ago. Indian industry has paved the way and shown the way that they can be global leaders. When you go to global meetings in Washington, DC, and Paris, it makes your heart swell with pride because just next to a Boston Scientific, Abbott, and Medtronic, there is a Merrill Life Sciences or a Sejanan Medical Technology. But even there, we have the same issue of inverted duty structure. A finished stent comes at 0% customs duty, and components come at 12% customs duty. So, in one of the shining examples of medical devices in the country, also we are faced with the same duty structure, inverted duty structure issue. Just thought I'll bring it to your notice.
Sure, Mr. Nirbhar, please go ahead.
I would just like to say this is for the first time. I've been in this department for 2.5 years. This is for the first time that I've come to know about the inverted duty structure in the stents. Though I had the pleasure of interacting with Indian stent manufacturers many times, it has never been raised by them.
Rajiv ji is aware of this issue and we've been raising it at various platforms.
Rajiv ji has been raising this generally for the medical device industry. But if we talk specifically of say stents, the industry or the association of stent manufacturers, I don't remember. Maybe they may have sent some email or something like that. But we have interacted on many platforms.
Well, I'm glad that today's discussion will be triggering that because now I'll be not forgotten. Gaurav, the stent manufacturers were always good at making stents all these years. Cost was not so critical. So maybe that's why the duty part, of course, it's been a pain point, but it's not been the biggest stumbling block. What was the turning point in the stent industry that made it go from a struggling industry to becoming known worldwide as a global champion and as a challenger to the established players there?
I think the difference was we always, on technical specification standpoint, Indian stents always had a unique edge. But Indian industry realized that outside of India, we will need a clinical body of evidence. And that is where companies like Translumina, Merrill Life Sciences, and Sejanan took the lead, conducted large global randomized clinical trials, and they prove non-inferiority to the market-leading product globally. And that is what turned the tables around for this industry in the last 6 years.
So,
No, I agree,
clinical trials
Rajiv.
did help. What was the role of the price capping on stents?
The price capping on stents was a huge enabler, and we can't thank the Department of Pharmaceutical and Ministry of Chemicals and Fertilizers enough for that. It not only gave us a level playing field, Indian innovators and manufacturers, but it also ensured that India's dependence on imports in one of the segments where we have huge capacity was adequately addressed. Indian manufacturers today have adequate capacity to not only cater to India's demand, but the entire Asian demand if given an opportunity. So thank you very much to DOP for
Rahul,
that.
yeah. Rahul, we just heard from Gaurav that price caps was a big enabler and a turning point in setting this forward. In addition to the credibility story, the equity funders were initially very cautious when price caps was being announced, and I had many phone calls coming in of investors being alarmed that this price caps is going to be curbing the market. And we said, no, it's going to be an enabler. What's your thought on that now?
No, sir. See, I would say that Sajanan got funded even before the price cap came in, right? So our private equity fund already saw the opportunity of growth of strong local manufacturers took that bet even before the pricing cap came in. And when pricing cap came in, they really benefited a lot because the company has grown almost 3x from that time. Right. So, sir, see, as I was saying earlier, Mr. Nath, that for higher adoption of indigenous products and then for investments to come in, 2 or 3 things will need to happen, and which is what exactly played out in the tent space, if we use that as an example, right, and which Gaurav already alluded to. One was an enabling policy action, which was capping the prices, because that we all know was intended to curb the malpractices being followed by many players in the market, right? That was at the heart of it. And that was successfully able to do that. So earlier I was giving that example, right? The same doctors who earlier used to vouch by MNC stents on the pretext of quality, after this have become the biggest adopters of indigenous stents because of one, that pricing action, and second, which Gaurav said, that see, government interventions alone cannot help the industry grow. As Gaurav said, these players also went and the biggest products head on through global quality building global quality credentials by randomized clinical trials. So that again became an enabler for hospitals to push with doctors and for doctors to push that with the patients. That see, now these products are available at much lower cost and they are of the same quality, non-inferior, and in certain cases superior as well to global products or MNC products. That has really swelled, and as Gaurav said, the market share of local players or indigenous manufactured stents has gone from 20 to 60% almost, right? The same thing can and should play out in medical device and medical consumables as well. So it will have to be a mix of government policy action. So I'm not suggesting a pricing cap, something like that. Let's say link it to Ayushman Bharat, say that the reimbursement rate will be, let's say, 5% higher or something like that. If indigenous products are used and promoted by the hospitals and the clinics and the doctors. And second, the companies, the point which I earlier also made, that we will have to assure that the quality is non-inferior. So either we do that by local quality assurance mechanism, or we again, push, and the industry will have to push itself to go and do similar stuff which the stent manufacturers have done, or the pharma industry has been able to do in the last 10, 15 years, where they have been able to prove that our products are not inferior to global products. And we are delivering these as cheaper prices. And that itself will, create huge demand and huge adoption for locally manufactured products, not only in India, but globally as well.
Thank you, Rahul, for giving those suggestions, whether it is in terms of price caps or giving a price preference to domestic buyers, domestic sellers to domestic buyers. Jatin, this is the second time Rahul has been raising concerns on quality. We are at the close of the session now. We close at 1:30, just a couple of minutes to go. So, how does the QCI or the BASI or the regulatory system address this concerns of quality? What is your thoughts on the ICBET certification?
So basically,
sorry, sir, before you start, I'll just like to clarify, Mr. Nath. I'm not saying that the quality is bad, but you need to convince the buyers and the adopters that the quality is good.
We got that. We got that.
Okay. So basically, just to build up on this point, there are two aspects to this. Like a coin has two sides, heads and tails. So we look at the product specifications, and then we look at the quality system specifications. So basically, when we have ICMED, which is the Indian certification for the medical device industry, so basically we are addressing the QMS part, and we are telling and we are assuring our customers that whatever products you're buying is of certain conforming of certain quality standards. Now, when we look at our regulator, who have been very supportive in COVID times, we've seen, they've given us approvals in 3 to 5 days, which I have not seen in the history of my interactions. So, what is important is that the product specification should be defined for each and every specific disease. Now, for example, in HIV, the specifications are defined for hepatitis B, for hepatitis C. So for each and every, even for COVID, so I mean, those specifications have been defined. So for each and every category, if these are defined, so it will actually be an enabler for the industry, for the consumer, and for the patients. Now, basically, what in case of IVD, what is important is these standards should be aligned to the global standards. For example, ICMED should be aligned to the global standards so that today maybe the manufacturer MSME is catering to the local needs and local demands. But tomorrow, if he or she wants to go international, the same standard should be acceptable in the foreign market and has an excess of use of this certification and access those foreign markets. So that will actually reduce the time to launch these products, because technically what happens is if the certification is different, there is we need to comply with the rules of the local law there, and that takes some time, maybe between 9 to 12 months or maybe more, depending upon the kind of regulation, maybe a low, medium, or a high regulated country. And also other thing is, if we have these certification, so testing labs, like for example, for HIV, there are testing labs in India which are available, which actually improve the quality of the product. So a manufacturer can approach the labs and see how their quality is working. Internationally, this is a very common concept. So we, as a company, we get our international evaluation done, so that when we show this to our customers, what Rahulji and Gaurav also mentioned, the same thing builds up a lot of confidence among the customers also, and they are actually then motivated to buy our products. So if this kind of QC labs for every disease, for example, Indian specificities like dengue, chikungunya, malaria, diabetes, scrub typhus, COVID, if these labs can be built up, it'll be a enabling ecosystem, which is a win-win-win situation for everybody. Be it the manufacturer, be it the patient, be it the customer, everybody will win from this. Yeah. So this is what is required actually for enabling environment. Yeah.
Nirbhar sir, in terms of this request for the infrastructure, of course, you're planning for the parks and everything. What is your perspective? And this may not be as a joint secretary of DOP, but purely as an Indian. What will be the ideal partnership model for the PPP mold between the various stakeholders over here? How can we have a better teamwork and partnership to achieve this Atmanirbhar campaign? Seeing these various challenges of quality, of
I think
access to certification, etc.
I think I agree with Jatin that we should have some labs on diseases which are specific to India or endemic, and it would help our industry as well as consumers if we are able to come out with quality products. And I also agree that we should have our eyes not only on the domestic market, uh, the quality standards. It should be harmonized, globally, so that we can also export. The export market is also available. And I would like to share that the thinking now in government is that, for example, in pharmaceuticals, that we should become member of PICS, and for that to happen, we have to invest in our regulatory bodies, more infrastructure, more training, capacity building, labs, as well as in industry. You have to move, take up your standards from Schedule M at present to maybe WHO GMP or better standards. That is the direction that we are looking at, and the quality should be globally acceptable. That there should not be two standards, one for exports, one for domestic consumption. That is the vision that the department has, and the Jatin has given a good suggestion, which may be worked upon, of having sufficient number of labs. Maybe we can have meetings with the concerned departments. And another thing is that to have a better partnership, we should be engaging more, like we are. We can have focus meetings on, say, with stent manufacturers or other industry, to go deeper into the issues rather than just having. We can't discuss those issues in a 45-minute, 1 hour seminar. So more engagement between all the stakeholders, more interaction between the department and the industry, and the focus on quality. I think that is my parting comment, and I'll now be leaving. I hope we are going to close this session soon because I have another important meeting and people are waiting.
Yes, sir, we are closing down. That was just for wrapping up. And I would like to thank you for this wonderful closing remark. Very encouraging that you are wanting to seek a stronger engagement with the industry, with the various segments of the various verticals that we have, various product categories, so that they can be more focused approach, because we've seen in COVID times when we had a focused approach to getting data for each of the products, what's being imported, what's the target price, why the imported price is being acceptable, and give the target price to the manufacturers and then support them to get the component making in the country. Within few weeks and months, we were able to address that. In terms of quality, and yes, sir, please.
One more point which I missed was that we are also open to look at the custom duties wherever we have sufficient capacity, good quality, and there is some issue with regard to dumping of cheap products. There we are open, and we have an open mind, and there also we would like to protect our domestic industry for initial period so that they can withstand such kind of attempts. We are seeing this in bulk drug also. Recently, the raw material prices have gone up, though the API prices have not gone up. So similarly, in medical devices, I would like to share with the industry the line of thinking that we are having right now.
Thank you. Another very encouraging closing remark. Thank you for that. And what I would like to suggest is Ministry of Health is taking care of regulatory part, the CDSCO. Now, DOP is not possibly taking care of the regulatory part because that is under the mandate of the Ministry of Health. You are taking care of the regulations of the pricing part, which is again strategically very important to the Make in India campaign and the Atmanirbhar campaign. Yes, sir.
Even in regulatory thing, now we are very much involved. DOP is now involved with Department of Health. We are a committee has been formed under Joint Secretary Dr. Mandeep Bhandari, Joint Secretary Regulations, and I am part of that committee. And the idea is to make regulations more transparent and to see that our approval times are near the global standards, things like that. So the working in silos that may have been happening in the past is not there. There is a committee on QR code and other codes on pharma. There also DOP is part of that committee, and the industry's views have been conveyed, and industry also is being consulted there also. And we are thinking of bringing an organic linkage between CDSU and Department of Pharmaceuticals in future.
Excellent. That's a wonderful thought going forward. And we would like to suggest possibly that at least for the voluntary certification and for quality coordination beyond regulations, which is a bare minimum requirement, we have to set higher sites to become internationally competitive, globally competitive. So what India needs to do to become globally competitive and to aid manufacturers to build their capacity and capability, if DOP can play a role, that'll be fantastic. So thank you all. Thank you, Rahul. Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you, Jatin. Thank you, Nirbhar sir. The last word is for Nirbhar. We close for the day.
I forgot to mention that we have formed a body called Pharma Bureau in the Department of Pharmaceuticals. And the idea of forming this body is to help the industry, handhold the industry in various issues that individual company may be facing. For example, a startup may be facing some problem. Somebody may be looking at forming a JV, or there are some issues with any department of either of the state government or of the central government. Pharma Bureau is willing to look into the issue and see if there is any intervention from Department of Pharmaceutical side which can help solve the problem. And Pharma Bureau has a dedicated email ID, phone number, separate office. Since it's a COVID time, pandemic time, otherwise I would have invited you to come to that office, and you would really feel welcome there. Industry would feel welcome there, and the issues can be sent through email also. We are looking at each and every issue that comes to our knowledge. I think that is what I wanted to share with all the participants. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all. And with this last word from Mr. Nirbhar, because the time is now up at 1:40, we are closing now. And we look forward to meeting again at a possible another panel discussion. But we've seen very encouraging and very supportive remarks from the Joint Secretary of Department of Pharmaceuticals, which shows by itself, going forward, that Atmanirbhar Bharat is not a distant dream. Thank you. Thank you all.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.